Hello everyone, how are you? This is class 2, the practice session. Today we're going to cover the article on universal grammar and the learning and teaching of second languages by Cook. The idea is to listen first to the video recorded by Professor Natalia, in which she explains and gives more information as regards this article. Then we advise you to do the quiz we have prepared that is on the virtual classroom. Here you will find the 5 statements you will have to choose either true or false. And here in this session we are going to see the justifications and to give a backup to each of the statements. I recommend you to have at hand, I have it here with me, the paper you were supposed to read, because I have highlighted some sections that I find interesting and that I think that are important for you to have a full answer for each of the statements. Okay, so let's start. Statement number 1. In Spanish, the construction of a question depends on the structure of the sentence itself rather than on the sequence of the words in it. This statement is true. This statement is true because in order to form a question, we must rely on the phrase structure of the sentence instead of the mere sequence of words. If you go to page 26 from the original on your reading, you will find here some important highlights. Basically, if you check this example, is Sam the cat that is black, you will see that this question comes from another similar structure, which is a declarative sentence. Sam is the cat that is black. And the author makes reference to this example in relation to the fact that the speaker knows that this verb to be is the one that must be fronted in order to form a question and not this verb to be. So, in this example, the speaker must be able to identify the independent clause from the subordinate clause in order to identify which is the instance of the verb to be that needs to be moved to the beginning in order to form a sentence. So, this is the reason why we say that forming questions depends on the structure of the sentence and not on the sequence of words. This is known as the principle of a structure dependency. It has to do with what I have just said. Forming questions depends on the structure of a sentence. Statement number 2. Any Spanish speaker will be able to identify a sentence like da el libro me as ungrammatical, thanks to the principle of structure dependency. This is true again as well. Thanks to the principle of structure dependency, any speaker can tell if a sentence is well formed or if a sentence is grammatical in the language they speak. Check page 28 from the original, this one here. And you will see this interesting statement. The author has presented different examples in different languages, showing that the speakers know when or where negative particles have to be placed, depending on the verb. Depending on the language, the negative particle will be placed before or after the verb. And this ordering of the words can be accounted for by a parameter called opacity. So the author goes, a French-speaking person has set the parameter so that these elements must follow the verb. He is referring to the negative particle pas. The negative particle pas in French is after the verb, whereas in English, when we want to use the negative particle, we must place it before the verb. So in this case, in the sentence da el libro me, we know that this particle, the particle me, must be prior to the verb. Me da el libro. This, or we are able to identify this due to the principle of structure dependency, as we have said before. Let's go to statement number 3. Knowledge of syntax has no incidence on knowledge of vocabulary. And this is present on page 28-29, again, of the original. This is false. Why? Because the knowledge of words is closely related to the syntax. The knowledge of vocabulary is very important to the theory of principles and parameters. And the author presents the example of the verb faint. A person who knows the verb faint knows not only the meaning, but also how to use the word in a sentence. The speaker will know that by using the verb faint, the speaker has to use an animate subject in front of the verb and no grammatical object after the verb. So the speaker will produce a sentence like, Peter fainted. And he or she will not say, Peter fainted Mary, using an animate subject, but using an object, which is not the pattern of the verb faint, or the speaker will not produce a sentence like, the rock fainted, because by knowing the meaning and how to use the word, the speaker knows that the verb faint cannot be used with an inanimate subject. Let's go to statement number 4. It is a fact that both Spanish and English kids start with a neutral setting for the pro-drop parameter. This is false. It might be possible, you can, if you check the material, you will see on page 31 from the original that it might be the case, but it is not a fact. It is not a fact that a child starts from a neutral setting of the parameter. It can either there are multiple options. It can either start from a neutral setting and move the setting to pro drop, or for example, think in terms of a Spanish speaker. We have said that Spanish is a non-pro drop language. So there might be cases in which the children start with a neutral setting and then they move to the non-pro drop, or to the unmarked setting, it would be. And there might be cases in which they start from the pro drop setting and they move to the non-pro drop. This change is only possible by evidence. That is to say, children, by hearing other people's utterances, they will be able to identify which is the unmarked setting. So, for example, a child, after hearing sentences like "Mommy phones Daddy," he or she will know that the order in declarative sentences for English is subject, verb, object. The child will know that the subject must be present in all declarative sentences. So the evidence can be either positive or negative. If you go to the following page, you will see that the author makes reference to the fact that the evidence can be positive or negative. If you are corrected by someone, then the evidence is considered to be negative. So, for example, in the case of Spanish, we have said that the non-pro drop setting of the parameter would be the unmarked setting, whereas the pro drop is the marked setting. Finally, we have statement number 5. The notion of present, past, and future time is a language principle. And this statement is true. I would like you to check on the first statements made by the author. In order to understand this statement as true, we must check on the difference between what is the principle and what is the parameter. This knowledge consists of principles that do not vary from one person to another. It means every human being is born with these principles. The difference is that depending on the particular language that is spoken by someone, the parameter settings must vary in order to adapt to the language that the person speaks. So the human mind has these built-in language principles that are part of the knowledge of any language. So the principles are this permanent equipment that speakers have in mind. But then the parameters change depending on the particular language we speak. So going back to the statement, this notion of present, past, and future time is a language principle. It's true because the fact it has to do with the idea of languages being able, or speakers of any language being able to express notions of present, past, and time and future time. Any language can make reference to these ideas of past, present, and future. The difference is that, depending on the language, we will be able to express this idea in different ways. So that's why we say this is a language principle and also a universal principle. It's a principle that applies to all languages, no matter the language. Take the example, for instance, of the expression, we can express future time in English and in Spanish, but in Spanish we do it by means of specific tenses, and in English we do not have a tense to express future time. We have to resort to different mechanisms to do so. So I hope I was clear enough. If not, please remember to go to your group on Google Classroom to start the debate with your classmates and with the student helpers. And in case you have doubts, you can go back to the forum on the virtual classroom and you can post there as a group your doubt. Thank you very much and see you soon.